Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session?
The doctors are in. Today on Writers Group Therapy, I'm joined by the award-winning author and journalist Alex Temblador to talk about her recently released groundbreaking book, Writing an Identity Not Your Own, a guide for creative writers. Alex received her MFA in creative writing from the University of Central Oklahoma and has taught creative writing seminars, workshops, and classes with the Women's Fiction Association, WritingWorkshops.com, and the Writers League of Texas. She has spoken about diversity at many festivals, conferences, and universities, as well as South by Southwest. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you for having me. So glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here too, because this book, Writing an Identity Not Your Own, a guide to creative writers, is like the perfect book for me because I'm afraid of two things when it comes to writing comedy and writing a character outside my own knowledge base, out of my own comfort zone and archetypes. This book, I think, is super important in today's environment. Talk to me a little bit about why you wrote the book and why now is so important for this kind of book.
Absolutely. Well, you're not alone. A lot of people have these same fears. I have these same fears. Um, so I had started teaching Writing an Identity Not Your Own, like a class, back in 2020 after Janine Cummins's book American Dirt came out. And it was a big conversation that we kind of forgot about because COVID hit soon after. So we had other pressing things to worry about at the time. But a lot of people had been talking about this subject for many years, for decades. In fact, there were many books before that had caused concern, and also in other forms of media, whether it was film and TV or um,
Mm-hmm.
radio and such. So this conversation had been around for quite a while. When I taught the class, one of the main questions I kept getting was, well, is there books I can read? Like, can I look at more information outside of this 3-hour seminar that I was teaching? And I couldn't find anything that was covering a lot of different identities or anything that had been written in the past 10 years or so, or 5 years. And I didn't expect to write the book for a while. I was working on my own fiction. I had sold a novel, and when I got to the editing phase with the publisher, I started to freak out myself and go, "Oh no, like I wish I had a list. I wish I had something sitting here next to me that would tell me exactly what I needed to look for, make sure to catch everything all in the edits." And I realized that, well, if I didn't have this and I'd been teaching this class for years, then maybe I should write something to help other people.
Yeah, and it's really important, and I've done this myself because I try. You have to almost write diversity into your stories and your characters because, quote unquote, the market wants it. So then you have this issue of, well, can I write as a white cis American male write about all these other types of characters? So I have this hang up in my head. It's like, am I even like qualified? Am I going to get hit with cultural appropriation or not understanding or being tone deaf? I mean, those are the fears we have. So
Hmm.
how do you approach that, as from any perspective? When you start writing something, how do you usually approach it?
Yeah. Well, one, I do hope that the market continues to want stories that feature people from different identities and
Hmm.
backgrounds. Um, it's even though it kind of, I think it feels like that's really what the market wants. Sometimes when we look at the numbers, it doesn't actually seem to be producing that in the ways that I
Hmm.
would love to see it. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a fear to come to create storylines or characters that feature identities you're not familiar with. I always like to tell people, okay, well, one, you've probably already written a character, if you are a writer, that has a different identity than you. It's just already happened. And the easiest one to kind of point to is women. Women are a historically marginalized identity still. Um, yes, there are other intersectional identities that maybe have more privilege in terms of women. Um, but we don't even think necessarily about how we're writing women. And that's why we have a host of stereotypes appearing in different forms of creative work still about women. Um,
Hmm.
when I'm approaching writing characters with different identities and teaching people how to do that, I always talk about intersectionality. Like, I'm not made up of one identity. I am a mixed woman, a Mexican American woman. Um, I am heterosexual and I'm cisgender and I am abled. And all of those make my voice and the things that motivate me in a storyline incredibly different from my brother, who, is my sibling, and he is Mexican American mix, but he is white passing and I am not. And he is queer and he is abled, but we also have a sister who has intellectual and physical disabilities. So just within my own sibling group, we all have these different identities that give us completely different perspectives about the world and
Mm.
how we might move in it.
Yeah, that's one thing I saw in your book that gave me a little bit of comfort. I read about the intersectionality, and that even though I fall into certain identity categories, I do have things in common with characters that are other identities. It may not be the main characteristic that everyone's going to focus on, but you can, at least in some ways, share something with that character. You have common ground, I guess, is the starting point.
Yeah, like I used to kind of teach it in a way in where I discuss like you look for those bridges between you and other identities. And in some ways that's still kind of true, but I pull back a little bit on that and really focus on sharing with people and encouraging writers to connect with the identity that you want to write about or that you're most like concerned about. So if you are writing a different race, you should absolutely invest in that community, and that's not meaning just buy their work or support their work in whatever way they produce it. That includes becoming actual friends and invested in the community, so much so that you get invited to the barbecue.
Mm,
They stop code switching around you. They start becoming open about their concerns, and you get an insight into the community because they trust you. There's this saying that James Ransom kind of put out there. They let you hold your babies, um, uh, they let you hold their babies, sorry, so that they trust you with their stories, and then
uh,
you understand what's at stake if you actually put out something that is harmful, misrepresentative, stereotypical, etc.
mm,
Because none of us want to do that. But if
right.
you are very much invested in the community and you've been supporting them and learning about this community, you're gonna work harder not to let that happen.
I feel like it's possible to be too safe in some cases, because if you like I have done, I know in the past, is I want to put a character into a story that's a certain race or a certain identity, for diversity reasons, but I don't understand, that particular world. So I wind up making them very generic. And so I don't know if that's worse than trying to be authentic and failing, or,
Yeah.
well, I mean, if you have a character in a story, a doctor, a cop, they could be any race. You just
Mhm.
you look at it from their job instead of their personal identity.
Yeah, I understand that. I think people will definitely pick up if you are forcing diversity in your story. And I have some examples in the book, which like there's the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, where Taylor Jenkins Reid includes like makes two characters black for this big plot twist, and like their
Mhm.
race hinges on that plot twist. And I think when that happens, sometimes like it seemed, I mean, I don't know her motivation, of course, but it seemed like if you are trying to use their race as this plot twist or just to create some diversity in the story, that you can get in trouble with it appearing in the storyline in ways that you didn't expect just to have like this character in. So I get a little bit nervous when people are really trying to write to what they think the market wants, which is diversity. Um, but yeah,
Mm.
definitely not all your characters do you need to like if it's just a random cop character that shows up once and doesn't appear, of course, you probably don't need to go far into it there. But if you have a secondary or tertiary character that is somebody of a different identity and you want to showcase the world around you kind of the way it is, then yeah, you're going to have to do the research and look into the social and the politics and the economic and financial aspects of somebody of that identity. And let's continue to go with the cop. If you have a cop that is a person of color, um, that's like a whole dynamic there. The way they interact with the public is going to be different than a cop who has white privilege or a cop
Yeah.
who is a woman interacts. We know through statistics differently with the public. So keeping those things in mind is very helpful and like even building up a smaller character.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's kind of like there's no way to avoid writing about other identities, like you say in your book,
Hmm.
because we all have other identities where nobody is the same as anyone else, and we all have these different buckets that we fall into.
Hmm.
You want to do the right thing. You want to research. You want to understand the community and the world they live in. But is that enough? At what point does, like you say, does that community, you know like, does that audience see what I'm writing and say, you're doing enough, we understand, thanks for trying,
Hmm.
versus it's like, you can't please everybody all the time, right?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's hard when you are writing other identities. We know that there is this social commentary that's going to come with it. It's unavoidable. I mean, me writing this book, I was prepared and understood that there's going to be people who don't like the fact that I've written the book, and for a billion different reasons. Some are going to enjoy it. Some are going to say you're allowing people to get away with things that they shouldn't be able to get away with, or some people are going to be disagreeing on different points that I make in the book, whatever it may be. Um, so yeah, it's something that every writer has to accept and know. And I think it is a good motivator. It helps you do the research and invest in the communities. When I edit my books, I am a mess of anxiety for a month, really, or months, however long it takes, really focusing on what I need to catch, making sure there's no stereotypes, making sure that I get beta readers of different backgrounds to give me different viewpoints, ensuring that my publisher has a sensitivity reader there to read my stuff, uh, looking at the story that I'm writing in a different perspective, whether that's reading it out loud to catch something that I'm not going to catch when I'm reading versus speaking it out loud. And then just knowing if the public doesn't like it or if they find something that I did wrong, um, recognizing it, admitting it, trying my best to make amends, whether that's like asking my publisher to fix something or, reinvesting more into the community that I was trying to represent in different ways. I'm going to do it because I feel like everybody should have their stories told with respect and care. And I want to make sure that that community trusts me if I'm going to share even a slightest part of their story.
Yeah, it sounds like you have this very positive view that if we educate writers with the right tools and the right processes to do this research, to understand things better, and not try to, like, uh, you know do it on the cheap, so to speak,
Hmm.
that audiences will understand and appreciate that. It's kind of like when you travel the world and you take the time to understand the local customs and the language, at least a little bit, the people there do appreciate it, even if you're not perfect.
Yeah, I think this is like a multi-level writing study that I would like to kind of go out. I mean, it's just not me that needs to work on this. I think people who are at higher levels of organizations or companies or publishing houses, the
Mm,
editors, the social media marketers, the publicity people, the agents, everybody can benefit from learning this. I shouldn't be the last front to make sure that this piece doesn't go out in the world that's stereotypical. I should
mhm.
have people who have my back who are in positions of power to to ensure that this doesn't go out either. Um,
Mhm.
but I know that they're human and they also don't they have not been taught. We many writers we have not been taught to sit back and think, how are we actually creating characters? How are we actually creating storylines? A lot of us just write instinctively, and in a lot of
Mhm.
creative writing classes and seminars and workshops, I would say especially workshops, they just say write something, share it with us, and now we're going to critique it. But they don't ever actually make you sit there and think, well, how do I create a character that is whole and fully formed and complex in all aspects of their identity, from race to their class to their education level. And so I'm hoping that if we start really thinking about those things, we're going to see less issues going out in the world, less misrepresentations and problematic portrayals, and we earn audiences trust that we can do this because we start to prove that we can.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny because I'm a screenwriter mostly. I don't write books, but Roshni writes both.
Mhm.
That's why I wish she was here. The tools that we use, I've done a lot of different used a lot of different tools for character development for screenwriting where you have, either a page long thing of questions to answer about your character, or you just start writing from, stream of consciousness about random things that the character thinks or does. And these tools help you kind of learn about your character. It feels like we can we can start this process a little bit more by just changing some of those questions,
Mhm.
because we'll put in there, okay, what ethnicity are they, where did they grow up, just we're like kind of scraping the surface with the tools we've used for a long time. But if we modify those tools and create a little more depth in there, we'll start to get to that point where we're reaching past the surface and understanding more about where they come from and what they've been through, to get to those other little niches of their personality and their identities.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with you. I have an exercise, I think it's in chapter 4 with characterization, where I have one of those lists. And now that we're talking, I'm thinking, you know, under each like historically marginalized identity in terms of race, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, it would be nice to have, other bullet points that say what what kind of laws affects this race? What
Mm,
kind of social perspectives affect this particular disability? Or what is the history of people who are queer in the US specifically, if you're writing about the US? And like
mhm,
having those many different bullet points that examines what that just in particular what that race experiences in the US, but also how does somebody of that race experience life in the South versus the North, or
mhm.
in Mexico versus the US? So things like that. Yeah, I would love to see us asking more questions of our characters in that way.
That actually brings up a good point. Is you talked about the North and the South. Do you feel that the globalization of media has created an environment where audiences, they're seeking diverse and authentic content that reflects themselves, but you have to go to, this is why I think a lot of content is being developed locally now. It used to be all
Mhm.
Hollywood. Now when you see stuff on Netflix, there's so much more content coming from other countries, and it shows that they're, because of the way the industry has changed, they are able to generate their own content that reflects their world and their reality.
Yes. No, I am extremely excited about the fact that we are getting exposed to film and media from around the world. I love watching Italian TV shows and Mexican TV shows, and you can tell when it is created by people from that area. And I really appreciate when the country or the state or the region, specifies that half the people that are working on the film needs to also be from that area, because you will get local perspectives. It will ensure that those local perspectives that are accurate and true appears. And as somebody from a different country, we're just not able to, necessarily know right away how things work in different places around the world. So I do think it's going to benefit our storytelling and the stories that um, the industry, entertainment industry, or publishing, book publishing industries see that are worthy. I mean, funnily enough, the biggest book festivals in Mexico, and most people don't know that, the biggest one in the world. And
Mm,
I love getting on Netflix and seeing, yay, there are some Latin stories that are coming out that are just not set in LA or New York, because like
mhm.
Latin people exist also in Texas or in the South or in Chicago or wherever it may be. So it's cool to see those things kind of coming up in the stories for sure.
Yeah, I do too. I've really expanded the global like orientation of TV and film that I watched in the last
Mhm.
5 to 10 years because of things like Netflix. It felt like they were programming for people of those nationalities on their service, but now it's really come to be where people of all nationalities will absorb content from all other places because it's good content. Squid Game was huge because not because it was Korean, but because it was really cool.
Yes.
And there's in shows like that, or films or books, you can't you can't really, especially this, they used to do this a lot, is they used to just make American versions of things. You can't
Mhm.
get the same, characterizations and experiences from a whitewash, so to speak, story. Just because, oh, it's a mystery, we'll just remake it with people speaking English. You don't always get the same thing as you do from a Korean drama because there's a different cultural background to it.
Yeah, I think something is absolutely lost when we do that. But what I love, I always kind of talk about this in storytelling, is that in I don't love using these terms West and East. Like in the West, though, typically the storyline, um, or the perspective that we have is like individualism, right? And that kind of appears a lot in our work. But I love seeing these Eastern influences that show like community as being
Mm,
the main aspect of a storyline at times, or we see the story structure take on a different format than the ones that we're used to. And I think that it encourages us to experiment more, to not be stuck in this idea of like, this is the right kind of narrative structure that we need to be focusing on, or is better than this one, because there's nothing better or worse about either one. It's just expanding our viewpoint of how storylines can be or character building can be. And I'm all
yeah.
for that.
Yeah, it's kind of the balance of uniqueness of identity and universalness of certain character like archetypes and stories. The great thing is you can watch, read books or watch shows or films from other parts of the world and you still understand the overall structure and flow of the story and the universal, kind of desires and goals of people, of human beings basically. That's kind of
Absolutely.
consistent. Yeah. So there's this, going back to the original discussion, is yes, there's this intersectionality where of cultures and stories and identities where there are differences that we need to understand to write authentically, but there are universal things that can help us to understand, other cultures and stuff better. So I think consuming more diverse content is going to help us all create more diverse content, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, absolutely. If you want to write a character of a specific identity, like read or watch or consume media from people who are of that identity, creating stories within their particular media format, that's going to inform you. Articles, documentaries, podcasts, hearing people talk in different podcast forms, or reading or listening to audiobooks versus reading books. All of those
Hmm.
things are going to impact you if you're getting as wide of a net as you can, cast
Hmm.
in terms of like research. And some of that is going to be entertaining, and some of it's going to be like hard research with studies.
Yeah, the great thing is that with the way the media and world has evolved, there is no shortage of sources to do that. Go through that learning process. We just have
Yeah,
to
and I think that
understand that we need to do it.
yes, and I think that's kind of maybe an excuse we had, you know, 50 years ago.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
we still had books, like we still had access to libraries and such, but we have so much access that we just didn't have even 30 years ago. We have these phones that can answer all of our questions. Um,
Mhm.
we have libraries, we have the ability to travel to many places we didn't have access to travel to
Mhm.
just like financially years ago. So there's no shortage of research opportunities.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, this is super interesting. I'm so excited to get into the book and help my writing going forward because I definitely understood that this was a wall that I was approaching fast, and you can only write so narrowly focused things, that safe things, I could say, for so long. If you want to write really interesting things, you have to go to interesting places.
Absolutely. I wanted this book to be something that people can pick up, read it through once, write whatever they're going to write. And then when they get to the editing phase, be like, oh, you know what? I need to look at that stereotype section and like make sure I don't have these and follow the
Mm,
editing checklist. Or maybe they refer to different chapters at different points in their writing process, going like, oh, you know what? I know I'm going to approach dialogue in this scene. Maybe I just need to brush up on this. Um, because it is scary and um it's hard as a writer to kind of move forward when you get stuck on some of these questions and you don't know where to look. I did mention we all have our phones and we have access to research, but a lot of feedback that I get is that people don't know what to look up. They don't know where to go to look up things.
mhm.
And so just having this book here in one spot next to you by your laptop hopefully can help out people.
Yes, I think it will definitely help people, and I think a lot of people will find this very interesting. You've really, touched on a very underserved, need in the writing community, and I think it's going to be a very popular book in the hands of writers and classes and teachers. I think you've really stumbled onto a little lightning in a bottle with this, and I hope it'll take off, and we'll see a vast improvement in just the storytelling that we do. It should really impact everything.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And, I hope it also fosters more conversation. I
Hmm.
don't want to just be the only one, and I know I'm not the only one chatting about this topic. Um, but I love feedback. I want more questions that maybe I can look into, and I want people to talk about it at conferences and festivals and with their writer groups and go like, how can we do this better, or what are we missing? What are we not addressing? And make it a comfortable topic to discuss because it's
Hmm.
so uncomfortable. I understand it's uncomfortable sometimes for me. Um, but the more comfortable we can speaking about it openly and um, creating more resources, I think it's going to improve things. So thank you
Cool.
so much for saying all that.
No, no, thank you for writing it. So the book is out now, and people can get it, I guess, on all the various platforms and stuff.
Yes, it is going to be in print. It'll be an ebook, and I recorded an audio. I recorded my audiobook, so you will hear my voice speaking
Oh,
if you
cool.
download that audiobook.
With your own audiobook. Cool. And so I assume now you're going to be just doing some promotion. You might be doing a book tour or something, or
Yeah, I would love to do. Well, I will have my book launch. I will have events, and I'm absolutely open for presentations and seminars. I have been doing all of that.
yeah, where can people reach you if they want to get you in a seminar or a talk?
Oh, please do. So I have two websites, but I have one specifically for this book. It's called writinganidentitynotYourOwn.com. So it's pretty
Oh,
easy to remember.
that's
You can contact me
straightforward.
on there, and I will have blogs and maybe other resources and videos of interviews and podcasts, all the stuff that you can read about it. And then you can also find me at alextemblador.com. That's my main author website. And I'm on social media at Alex underscore Temblador
Okay.
on, Instagram, Twitter, because I won't say X, um, threads, and all the maybe slash Alex Temblador on Facebook, but I'm definitely on Instagram and Twitter more.
Great. Wonderful. And what are you going to be working on next? Do you have anything lined up, or are you just focusing on this for the moment?
Oh, well, we have a book we're trying to sell, so fingers crossed for that. I'd love
Okay.
to see that one sold. And then I'm working on 2 novels right now. One is literary fiction with speculative elements about a author who goes missing and reappears 13 years later without any memory of being gone.
Oh,
And
mm,
then I'm working on a romantasy about kind of like an Alice in Wonderland story where a woman of our world falls into another one.
cool. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on Writers Group Therapy. This has been really interesting. And if you have other books in the future, maybe we'll have you back.
I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me and chatting about this. I'm so glad that your listeners are going to learn about my book. And thank you and good luck, everybody. Happy writing.
Thank you. All right. Well, do check out alextemblador.com and writingandidentitynotYourOwn.com. We'll put the links in the show notes. And do look for Alex's writing. She's all over the place. She's done a lot of travel writing, and she has her novels as well. Do follow us on social media at WG Therapy, and visit writersgrouptherapy.com for more episodes. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thanks.